Hello and welcome back to another episode of the It's Not Orange podcast. We're back live as Blackpool get back to winning ways away from home as a 3-1 convincing win sees them look up the table rather than down, and they look to make it 2 in a row tomorrow night against Lincoln. Helping us preview that game is Ben from the Stacey Wed podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How yourself?
Yeah, apart from not being able to say the word podcast, but I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, surviving. It's good to be getting back to winning ways ourselves as well. Obviously, a pretty convincing one from our lot on Saturday too. So yeah, it's all good.
Of course. After a while out, Kurt, how are you, mate? And thank you for joining us.
Well, I had a wicked weekend down in Exeter. Had a Friday and Saturday night down there. So normally the football ruins what could be a fantastic weekend away with your mates, but actually it sort of topped it up. So great city, Exeter. It's a great weekend away. So yeah, looking forward to talking about this one.
I heard you're watching a cinematic masterpiece for the first 45 minutes around 3 o'clock. You have to tell us about that.
From about a centimetre away from the goal as well, because the away end at Exeter is like that. So just about saw some of Tom Bloxham's magic. So yeah,
amazing. My usual co-host Martin, how are you, bud?
I'm good. Yeah, Saturday was good. Obviously, I was watching it from afar, but nice to see we've signed a future Ballon d'Or winner in Tom Bloxham.
Yes, we're going to talk about the game on Saturday, of course. But first, we're going to allow our guest to take some of the limelight. Welcome, Ben. I wish I was talking to you in more difficult circumstances for Lincoln, but 2 wins in a row sees us tomorrow line up to be quite a tasty game. But just talk to the listeners and of the It's Not Orange podcast about how your season has gone so far, because you sit obviously just above us in the table. But if we win tomorrow, we go just a point behind you.
Yeah, so I think if you'd have had this, if the game had been 2 weeks ago, it would have been a very different conversation that we were going to be having. We started off pretty well, we trouble in the top 6. I think at one point, a few people maybe even thought, could we trouble the big 2 in the division? And yeah, we had a bit of a sticky run in sort of November, December time. We scored 1 goal in 9 hours of football. It was a tough watch for a little bit, and then got a decent 3 points away at Northampton last week, and Saturday we turned over a very poor Peterborough side. So yeah, I think we're getting back on track. I think my expectation was probably to finish around sort of 10th or just above, potentially just missing out on the playoffs again, given what we thought was going to be the strength in the division this season. But I think we're on course for that, and I think there's a few optimistic ones that are still hoping we can trouble that top 6.
I do think that any team that puts a run together will have the ability to finish maybe 5th or 6th. I think the top 4 corner is probably going to make up itself at the moment, but I think any team, and usually that does happen, Leyton Orient, Lincoln's of last season, have always proved that is the case. We did put a mini run together, of course, but we bottled it on the last day. But I think you always get that team that maybe win like 8 in 10 and start to sneak in. So we'll be interested to see how that unfolds in the second half of the season. But yeah, Kurt wants to talk to you about last couple.
Yeah, I was going to say, here we go. Lincoln are going to do their standard second half of the season, actually start to play football. Maybe you should start it a little bit earlier to give yourself a bit of a better chance. But talk us to us about the last 2 games, because obviously you dismantled Peterborough and you beat Northampton, and we got battered by Peterborough. So it's an interesting result from my point of view from what we've seen. But what seems to have changed between those 2 games to go 2 in a row?
The honest answer is I don't really know. There was just a bit of a malaise about the club. I think it wasn't like people were out injured. People weren't, people particularly playing badly. We were still playing okay for chunks of that run that we had where we weren't scoring. But we just couldn't seem to make a decent opportunity or finish one when one came up. I think it started to turn around a little bit with the we've had 2 incomings so far. I'm sure we'll speak about that in a little bit. But I mean, the first incoming that we had didn't play in the Northampton game. But we we went out there. I mean, it was not a fun game of football to watch. It was, it was a boggy pitch. It was just an awful game for the neutral to watch. But we managed to get the goal, and we clung on to it for the win. And I think when you're on a bad run, you just the negatives hit more and they hit harder. So the more times that you don't score, the more you think, oh Christ, you've just got that monkey on your back. And I think getting the goal and getting the win, hopefully has shifted that. And like I say, it was just a poor game to watch, but we came out on the right side of it. And then it came to Saturday, and obviously we've signed an experienced striker going into Saturday, and everybody thought, oh, cool, right, he's going to start and he's going to, show the lads what they can do. He didn't start, so for the second time in 2 weeks, none of the new signings started. So the people that we were clamoring at, a lot of the fans were clamoring for, thinking, oh yeah, if we sign X and Y, then we'll be a better side. They didn't play, and we absolutely took Peterborough apart. I mean, they were terrible. They were a really poor side, and Duncan Ferguson lost his mind after the game in his interview. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a mentality shift more than anything else. Because, like I say, if you're on a bad run, you just start having that moment where one thing goes against you, then another thing, then another thing. But once we'd gotten that win out of the way, and we thought, oh right, maybe we're not as bad as people are thinking we are. It all started to click. And I mean, on Saturday, as bad as Peterborough were, I thought we were just as good. Like we looked excellent for big chunks of the game. Getting back to the sort of style and the identity that we know we've got, because that really started to sap away a little bit after, particularly I think it was the Rotherham game at home where we lost 2-1. We just didn't look like we knew what we were doing. But it seems like it's come back now. So it hasn't really coincided with anybody coming back from injury. It hasn't really coincided with much at all. I mean, we kind of imploded against Bolton. Ethan Arahan got sent off for 2 yellow cards for dissent within 5 minutes of each other. One of which was actually at half time. And at that point, there was so much like dissent in the fan base. We just thought, what is going on? But yeah, they've sort of pulled it together, and we've gotten 6 points out of 6, and it's been Saturday was just a wonderful performance. And we in our Stacey West group chat, one of the lads texted about I think we were about 4-0 up at that point. He goes, oh no, 3-0 up. He goes, I'm having a wonderful afternoon. Yep, that sounds about right.
I mean, you've touched on it, Ben, but before the Northampton game, I think it was 4 wins in 10, which is not, but also not exactly kind of promotional playoff form. But you say it's hard to put your finger on it. But did the fans start to question what was going on? Did they think maybe that last year was not a flash in the pan, but the magic had somehow gone, and that the manager had maybe run out of ideas, or what was the general sort of thought? Because when we spoke yesterday, I think your fan base is very positive about the club as a whole, aren't you? And they're probably a not so great run probably didn't completely damage faith, but how did the fan base see it, that sort of sticky patch you went through?
I think it's the phrase that a lot of people use. It's the silent majority, isn't it? The silent majority, I think we're pretty okay with where we are as a club and where we know we're hoping to get to. You obviously get the very vocal ones on social media, and I think there were a few calls for Skubala to go at one point. And you just think he's got the 4th most points in the entire country in a calendar year. How can you suddenly say, oh, that's it, it's time to go? I mean, there were, I say back to back, we lost 2-1 to Rotherham, and then we drew 0-0 with Stevenage, and they were poor, and there was some boos at the end of the game, both of those games, and there were some slightly confusing substitutions in them as well. So I think the majority of the fan base, while it's been not necessarily worrying, I mean, I was a little bit concerned after the Rotherham game, but coming away from it, you always look to see if you can figure out what it is we're trying to do, even if we're not pulling it off. And I think after that game, I didn't think I could see that. Then going into a couple of other games, you think, oh, okay, yeah, this is back to being us. And I mean, the first half against Huddersfield, I thought we were fantastic. And then they kind of got their act together in the second half, and we ended up drawing that game. But the form before this past couple of weeks, it's been up and down, and it's like I said, I can't put my finger on what it's been. Like normally, if you go, oh well, we're not scoring, so we need a striker, or we're conceding too many, we need another defender. It's just there was nothing seemingly going our way, and we just couldn't figure it out. It was just a weird intangible where things were seemingly breaking down. But I think for the people that were screaming for Skubala to go, I think it was way, way, way too early for that. And like I said, it seems like it was a very vocal minority. And hopefully now he's back in the good books. I mean, we'd not beat Peterborough for I think it was 1,500 days or something like that before then. And it was our biggest win over them since the 60s, I think somebody said the other day. So, relatively local rivals, you expect to have a bit of needle in those games. And it was nice to come out on top of that.
Talking of your gaffer then, Skubala, last season was, well, he was taking sort of the EFL by storm, wasn't he? Everyone was talking about your style of play and the way he mastered sort of attacking football and being quite clinical on the attack. Saturday proved to be quite clinical. I think you had, 40-odd% possession, wasn't it? So Peterborough still tried to do their thing and control the ball, but you were very rapid on the counter and scored some smart goals as well as a good free kick as well. Just talk to us about that man then. Is it a squad issue in terms of how much depth he's got in terms of his ideas and they can't implement them very well, or is it just a case of, like you said, it's just a bit of a I don't know, a wobble during that season? Because obviously you lost one, lost four in a row, then drew, then lost. So obviously that middle part of your previous run is quite poor, and the managers obviously do get questioned. But he's still a very good manager, as you say, most calendar or fourth most calendar points with Lincoln. So do you think that started to eke back into the players, or do you think it's a case of it was never sort of lost, but the players just didn't perform to his standards?
Yeah, I think to be honest, it was mainly a confidence thing. And when we've got a relatively young squad now with 2 or 3 more experienced players in the midst of it. So when you've got a young squad, I think if confidence starts to go, it's very difficult to get that back up quickly. Obviously, decent win will normally lift the spirits and give a bit of belief back. But in terms of the way that Skubala sets us up, we will always have a plan to counter the opposition. So it's not necessarily, how do Lincoln play? It's kind of how can we set up to nullify what they're trying to do. And I think there was an interesting stat from Gary actually on the Stacey West pod yesterday, and he said that one thing that is noticeable is that you have, when we've had a game Saturday to Saturday, we've won far more of those Saturday to Saturday games because of the time that's available on the training pitch than we've had Tuesday, Saturday. So whether that plays into your hands tomorrow night, I don't know.
It's in.
But it's. I mean, I'm a big fan of Skubala. I think he's the way that he's got us playing football is really attractive at times. There were a few complaints a while ago about, it's too much long ball, and then he's not afraid to explain his reasoning for stuff. And we've had fans forums and things like that, and he said the reason that sometimes we go long is because we like to press high. So if you get it up and then you've got a chance of winning the second ball, if you can't find a way through the midfield, get it high, make the defender deal with it, and then put the pressure on him and see if you can win the ball back up, high up the pitch and go on and score. I think probably a little bit too much of that over that poor run maybe tainted the view a little bit. But I mean, like you say, when we had 2 draws, a win, and then 3 losses, it was like, oh yeah, okay. The win could have been the the corner that we turned, but instead it didn't continue the way that we thought it might do. But yeah, I'm a big fan of him. You know, he's very approachable. He's very amenable with all the fans. You know, he'll not shy away from questions and interviews. But at the same time, you know, he won't throw anybody under the bus if there's a problem to be discussed. Say, as there was in the Bolton game, he sort of came out after that and said, "All right, yeah, he messed up. We'll deal with that internally."
Yeah, I must say, just going back to your style, obviously last season we saw how good you were, but I thought at Bloomfield Road, other than us not getting the second goal and you equalising late on, I thought you were, I don't know if it was at one of those games in that where you were quite poor. I genuinely thought like this wasn't the same Lincoln we're playing, because obviously the way Gary talked about your style and what you were going to bring, you were very good in the second half. I think you made a couple of changes and it really rattled us. I don't remember the game, Kurt, but we had obviously opportunities to win the game in that first half, and there was like a force field in between Morgan's shot and the post, etc. But it's one of those games where we should have been 2-0 up, but because we didn't score that second, that equaliser stopped us going second at the time.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of thing where you have the mentality of being hard to beat first, and then after that you can go on and try and win the game. And that really showed. I mean, I'll fully agree with you. I don't think we were great for a big spell of the game at Bloomfield Road. It was just it was one of those where I thought, okay, yeah, we'll hold on for a 0-0, and then obviously 75 minutes, you guys get the goal, and you think, yep, okay, let's write this one off. But then for the last 15 minutes, I think it was a case of Skibala just going, just going, right, caution to the wind, sod it, let's go. We've not got anything to lose at this point, and we came in and managed to nick a point.
Yeah, I've just been having a look at your squad. Interesting, you swapped your goalkeeper out, and I'm pretty sure I've seen your goalkeeper that's in now is Zach Jaycock in goal the last 2 games. He played for Gloucester City last season, so it's a bit of a, at times on loan, I think. So it's a bit of a jump up from National League North, I think they're into League One. But talk to us a bit about your signings. You've just signed Collins and Klukas. That screams of adding a bit more experience to the squad to me. And the fact that Sam Klukas is 34 years old is mental, because I'd seem to remember him being at was it Swansea where he was at 20. But what are you expecting from them? And where else do you kind of need to strengthen?
It is exactly that. We've needed experience. I think when we weren't scoring, we were reliant on Freddie Draper, Jovan Makama, and Bailey Cadamartri. Obviously, Ben House has been in and out of the squad with injury, but those three in particular, they're very young. Obviously, Cadamartri's on loan from Sheffield Wednesday. He's currently out for, I think, about 6 weeks. Then we've got Jovan and Freddie, who are academy projects, and they've come through, and they get way more stick than I think they deserve. Jovan hasn't scored many, but he looks sharp in a lot of other areas. I think he set Collins up at the weekend, for example, and I think he's still finding himself as a footballer. Freddie went away on loan to Walsall last season, came back last January, and kind of lit the league up. Well, lit League Two up a little bit. But didn't really recapture it. But we were desperate for a striker last season, so we were reliant on those young players to get all of our goals. Bringing James Collins in, we immediately saw on Saturday what he can bring. I think the level of obviously, Derby's top scorer last season when they went up. He's not played too much in the Championship this year, but coming across to us and having a platform to still play football, and I think it's the experienced side of it that we've desperately needed. If you've got younger players, if you've got somebody on there that's been there and done that, they can guide them a little bit and take them under the wing and hopefully just give them a little bit more support on the pitch and training and everything to improve them. So yeah, we were crying out for it. I mean, it's a meme, every January it's death taxes in Lincoln City looking for a striker in the window. It's the same thing every year, but I think we've managed to get one this year that a lot of people are going to be really happy with. In regards to Sam Klukas, he started his career with us He's a Lincoln lad, born and bred, and he got a few games for us. It must have been 16, 17. And then obviously went on to have the career that he's had. And there were a few rumours that he might be coming back, and it's always one of those where you hear it, you think, oh, okay, maybe at some point, but now it's actually happened. Again, I think it's another experienced body in the building to help out the younger players. We've now got an experienced striker, we've got an experienced midfielder, and we've got an experienced defender in Tendai Darikwa. So we've got the support network around the young players now to maybe hopefully give them a bit more support on the pitch during the games. Just before we go on to key players, sorry, that you mentioned about the goalkeeper there. So George Wickens has been he's been pretty consistent for us, and then he actually got injured a couple of weeks back, so that's why G-Cock's come in. And if I'm honest, I think Wickens is going to have a fight to keep his place when he comes back.
So tell us about some of the other key players, Ben, because obviously I remember when we played you at Bloomfield Road and Hamer scored from a corner, obviously to equalise, and we said yesterday that it was it was a proper sort of centre halves kind of back post finish, and he's one of those typical sort of League One warrior defenders, isn't he? That hard as nails and gets stuck in. But you've also got Darikwa, who's had a lot of goal involvements this season. But just tell us about those two, and also anybody else that's you think might be a threat to us.
Yeah, so Tom Hamer, unfortunately, we've not seen him for a while because I think he fractured his ankle, or he did something to his ankle just before Christmas, or sort of late November. So we haven't seen much of him over the past couple of months, but he has. We've been told today he's returned to training, so that's a real positive for us. The other one you mentioned there, Darikwa, a lot of eyebrows got raised in the summer. We've signed a 32-year-old. You think, what? That's not how we sign players. But he's been a revelation. Obviously, we sold Lars Sorensen in the summer to Huddersfield, and we thought we're not going to get a decent enough replacement for Lars. And Tendai's come in and he's been phenomenal. The fittest 32-year-old I will ever lay my eyes on. He doesn't stop running. He's a really good wing back for this level. I was a little bit concerned on Saturday because Theo Eden came back for Peterborough, and obviously Theo played for us for a few seasons. And we have this thing where if we've got a former player, then the likelihood is that they'll score against us. But Tendai had him on toast for the whole game. He had him sussed from minute one. In terms of other key players, I think that the two big ones that most Lincoln fans will turn around and talk about is Paudie O'Connor, who's the captain.
Yeah.
You want a warrior. Paudie O'Connor just fits every single box when you talk about what you want in a central defender. He's strong, he's determined, he's got the ability to get forward. I think at one point he might still be. He's had the most touches in the opposition box of a Lincoln City player this season, and he's a central defender. He's just an absolute warrior. A lot of discussion at the moment about potential move to the Championship. So we will have to see how that one plays out. But I think if we keep him, he's out of contract in the summer, so it's one of those: do we let him go for a fee, or do we keep him and let him go at the end? I think it's all going to depend on what we can see, what we can potentially get from him on the pitch.
We had him, although not many people remember it because it was during the boycott time when no one was watching us. But I do remember. I think it might have been the Arsenal game. I think he either scored, or I seem to remember him playing against Arsenal because watching it on TV. But he was, did he start at Leeds? I think it might have been at Leeds or wherever we got him from. But I remember him having an awful lot of ability. It's just a pity that not enough Blackpool fans saw him play at that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he's had so many injuries this season, but he's barely missed a game. But I think he dislocated his shoulder the other game in the 5th minute. And made it the full 90. So he's a beast. The other real key player, and the one that I think a lot of Lincoln fans are hoping when he does go, he'll bring us a lot of money, is Ethan Arahan. He's just he's a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. Just the way that he can dictate the play. He won't score goals. He won't get many assists. But just if you put Ethan Arahan in an escape room with a football, he'd be out within 5 minutes. He's just that good with, two players closing him down. He'll just make 2 touches, get out of it, and we're on the way to an attack. He's brilliant. Yeah, they're the danger men, I'd say.
Okay, 5 minutes to go then. Just talk to us about, just double-barreled question. Talk to us about your system, because it lines up in different ways on various websites, and watching you it changes when you counter on the attack with Tariqa obviously pushing up as a wing-back / winger. So talk to us about your system and how it works overall, and secondly finish off with the opportunities for Blackpool and where you see we can potentially hurt you tomorrow night.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, we start with a 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, whichever way you want to look at it. I should say wing backs, usually they would be Tariqa, and it's been Dom Jeffries recently. Obviously, he got his goal at the weekend. Then the midfield 3, kind of a not quite a 10, but almost a 10, in front of usually Arahan and McGrandles, and then up top we're going to have 2. Presumably tomorrow, I would expect to see James Collins starting, likely alongside Freddie Draper, and then as you say, when we have slightly different shapes when we're in and out of possession. If we are out of possession, you'll watch it compact a little bit, particularly if you're on the break. We'll compact a little bit. Maybe it'll look like a 4-4-2 for most, and then when we go up to attack, the width kind of opens up a little bit more, as you say, with those wing backs going forward. We like to hit people high up the pitch. So if you want to piddle about with it at the back, just play it amongst your defenders, you're probably going to be in trouble. Particularly when, like, Freddie Draper and Ben House play, they love to really harass defenders and try and win the ball back. And then other than that, how do you think how do I think you might be able to hurt us? I don't know, if I'm honest. There was a spell a little bit earlier on in the season where we would make like silly individual errors. They are starting to get a little bit few and far between now. I think one thing that is interesting is from where we've looked at it, there doesn't really seem to be any like systemic weakness in how we're playing. So it's not like you can go, oh well, if they come in and if they come in and chip the ball over the top and someone runs onto it, our pace isn't that good in the back line. It's like, well, it's not the best in the back line, but we've got enough to deal with it, and we were conceding quite a few set pieces a while ago, but that seems to have dried up a little bit as well. So I think we're a solid outfit, and it's actually very similar to what Martin was saying to me yesterday on our preview show. Because when we played the clip on our podcast, Gaz even said at the end of it, for the last 2 minutes, I could swear I was listening to a Lincoln fan, because it was, we're a solid outfit without a decent goal scorer, essentially. But I think now we might have found that. But yeah, I think defensively we're pretty solid. But maybe that set piece weakness is probably still there a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to see.
We will have to see. I think you conceded 7 less than us, but we got, I think, ironically, we conceded 5 against Peterborough in a horrific game. So we've had very similar records this year. I think you've scored 3 less goals than us, but conceded 7 less. I think it will be potentially a bit of a stalemate. Hopefully we can have the quality to sort of nick the game, but it will certainly be one of those ones where it's, I think, not defines the season, but will certainly be a momentum builder. It'll be 3 in a row for you, or another. If we can nick the win, it will certainly be a catalyst for us, because we've still got like 12 home games left. Not that they make a difference at the moment, but it will certainly be an interesting game, whatever the outcome. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, mate. Bang on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
First time I've done that specifically on half an hour as well. So good luck for the rest of the season after tomorrow. But thank you for giving us an insight on Lincoln.
Anytime. Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Ben.
Cheers, bud.
Yep, gents, we can talk about a win for the first time in I don't know how long. It's been a long time coming, and it was a fantastic game. Kurt, you were there. I'm going to load the lineup as I usually do. Obviously, a pretty similar lineup to what you used to, Kurt, but Tyre in goal, a Fire and Husband making up the wing backs, Casey and Baggett due to Pennington's injury. Saw him come in, so it's like 1 in, 1 out, of course. It was good to see Elkin back in the last game, and of course, obviously ready to start this game with no real concerns, which is great. Apter and Hamilton on the wings, Morgan and Carey in the middle, and Bloxham and Fletcher again starting up front. In terms of Carey coming in for Evans' injury and Baggett coming in, obviously not real many surprises in there, but obviously a late change to the midfield with obviously Evans dropping out.
Yeah. I think that the Evans news is a bit of a double-sided thing for me because I've got a bit of a theory about Albie Morgan, and I always think that he plays better when he's the centre of attention in midfield. I felt that when he was partnered with Norburn last year, and when he's got a bit of responsibility on his shoulders, I think he comes out of it looking really good. And that Saturday, I think Saturday really showed it. He took the dominant position, ahead of Carey in terms of, give me the ball, I'll deal with it. But I thought Carey came in and had a really solid game, without pulling up too many trees. He got put on a silly yellow early on. Awful referee on Saturday for both teams. Although he got the rub of the green.
He did kick it away.
Yeah, but the referee was atrocious. Like, we got fouls where it's clearly not fouled. Whatever, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, look, Baggett has kind of fallen back into the centre of defence, and I kind of feel like that's our best back four. I really like Pennington. I think he's done a great job over the last however long. But I think if you were to choose a back four, you'd probably go for that back four. And Baggett had a much improved game than what he did. He looked a bit ropey when he came on last weekend. So yeah, look, it was all we had really. I think the only thing I would have done is, and I said this pre chat, was I would have given Silvera the start just to see what he'd be like from the start. Hamilton was a bit anonymous against Huddersfield, but obviously he scored. He had a good game, but that's the only thing I would have done pre-game, is probably look to see what he brought for a full 90.
Yeah, and you're right. Sometimes when you have an injury or someone comes out of the squad, it's a chance for you to see how we sort of adapt to circumstances. And although Exeter, Martin haven't really been filling up any trees, they were in and around where we are, of course, having a pretty average season. But it was a chance for the team to change, not shape on paper, but just have a different dynamic without Evans sort of holding back and trying to dictate play. Like Kurt said, a bit like Morgan likes to do. So Morgan therefore becomes the main man in the middle and allows Carey to do what he wants to do, which wasn't spectacular, but again, added something a little bit different to the attack.
I think we've done very well to get this far into the season without losing Evans for too long, because obviously the worry was his injury record when we signed him, but he's probably had one of the best runs of his career, hasn't he, really, since he's been here in terms of keeping fit. So it was inevitable it was gonna end, and like you say, I agree with what Kurt says. I think Morgan, when he's the main man, definitely steps up, and he's taking more and more responsibility, which is brilliant. And it just, unfortunately, does show where we're weak, doesn't it? We really don't have too many options. Finnegan seems to be completely out of favour. And he seems to like Sonny Carey. So, Ryan will be delighted with that.
It is one of those ones. He's not going to come onto, and to be fair, not just to Carey and Baggett, but to the team. We've won a game 3-1 away. We've drawn to Stevenage. We've drawn to Northampton at home. When Evans has been playing, and it's not just Evans' fault. Something a little bit different, and it is a bit more of a follow-on from last week, where we should have won the game, of course. But it was good to see us have such a fast start, Kurt. Within the first minute or so, Blackpool win a corner, and from the Zoltan corner, Fletcher has a header. Obviously off target, but at the same time, getting a corner within sort of 30, 40 seconds of the game was probably a sign of where Bruce wanted to pick up from the Huddersfield game, and it was fantastic to see, of course.
I think this is where the Joseph dynamic, of someone that's got a lot of pace, can press really well. I think that's why Ballard in the first sort of stint when we won a few games really worked really well, because the way Bruce wants to play is, you've got wingers and the two up front being really mobile to press. And I think, that's what we need to find off of the bench to replace. And I'm jumping a bit forward to the bench, but yeah, great fast start, really high tempo, really dominant, really in their face, and set standard from early doors. I think they had a bit of a spell. I think you're running through the sort of shot map there. They had a bit of a spell for 5-10 minutes after that, but then we just kind of took over the half, and we could have been, it could have been 5 or 6. I think, in my opinion, that we were great value for the lead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kurt, sticking with you in terms of the start, it wasn't like end to end, so to speak, but it was one of these games where you could kind of see Blackpool feeling their way into it. And although Exeter had the ball, they didn't have any ridiculously easy chances. I think Tyra made a good save down with his feet, didn't he? But other than that, really, we did start to pick up the ball a little bit. And it started off with Bloxham having a little interchange with Fletcher and having a fantastic shot, which cannoned off the right-hand post. And you just saw that bit of intricacy he's got by opening up that space and having the ability to even shoot and get that on target. He's just got that little bit of composure about him, and that difference in, Joseph potentially would have had a shot. I'm not comparing both, by the way. It's just Joseph or Fletcher or Ballard. They might have had a shot in that instance, but Bloxham is shown in when he's surrounded or when he's got those little pockets, he's not afraid to have a go.
Yeah, I think from Saturday, the week before, Huddersfield, in front of the North Stand, he rolled one past the post, and I was a bit like, he's hit that well, but is that what he is? Because when you look at his statistics, now I've said this a few times, I still think he's a winger, but he's someone that's got the attributes to be a striker, because both of his goals he would have scored irrespective whether he was on the wing or up front in that sort of position. So his goal and his assist, he would have done exactly the same. But I was thinking after the Huddersfield game, is that what we've got? In that he's got a lot, he can create a bit, but when it comes to the crux of it, does he actually have the end product? And I think maybe he converts to a striker because he's got that pace, which is that foot quicker than your average centre back or full back at this level. And he showed with his goal, it's just outrageous finish. And even the assist is outrageous because most strikers are hitting that assist for Fletcher, by the way. Most strikers having a shot. If they've just scored, they're having another shot. But maybe that's a good thing that he's been on the wing and that he has the composure to go, do you know what? Here you go, Fletcher, you've got a much easier chance than me. Because we've seen that too many times this season, Apter not squaring stuff, Joseph not squaring stuff. How many times have we had that? And when you're playing away from home, 3-0, game's over. Second half, you have to come and get us. We'll defend for 45 minutes. Right, you scored one in the 85th minute, whatever. It's already 3-0, it's done. And that's what we've missed a lot of times this season in various games. So, look, it's really, Bloxham in particular is really exciting. He's probably one of the most exciting players that we've signed on a permanent for a while, I think. But, it's only his second game. Let's see what he can do for us. We need extra heads around him and quality, which we'll talk about later about off the bench.
Yeah, completely agree. Although you said the game was done at 3-1, I still was a little bit nervous, especially with the maybe controversial decision, which we'll discuss a bit later on. But Martin, just in those early stages, though, it was what I liked for Huddersfield and this game, of course, this game being much more evidential that we scored 3 goals, but it was just the way with CJ, with Apter, with Bloxham and Fletcher coming into the game a lot more. Those 4 are working really well together and they settled almost immediately. And like Bruce said, it's beautiful that Bloxham had all those games for Shrewsbury because it just means he can start the next game in a different shirt. So he's fit, he's ready, and they are interchanging really well. And as long as time goes on, they'll start to build that relationship even more.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that we haven't we've signed a player with potential, but somebody who knows that league. He's played a lot of games at that level. He just slots straight in. He doesn't really need to learn what the kind of defensive situation's like or what he needs to do. He'll get better as time goes on, but he just knows that league already, and for such a young kid. And but he looks older, doesn't he? He looks like he's 26, 27. He's so well built, he's powerful. And it's a scary front line, isn't it, really, with Apter and him and CJ if he's got his head on, and even Fletcher. I mean, Fletcher will score goals if Bloxham sticks it on a plate for him. And it was my favourite out of the three, that goal, like Kurt. So that composure, early in the season, someone like Bolla would have probably tried to smash that across the keeper and probably wouldn't have gone in. But the actual, just the sheer presence of mind to just square it, it was actually a beautiful thing. It's when you score a goal like that on FIFA on your games console and you sort of think that's taking the mickey a little bit. But I really loved his composure, and I like us all of a sudden. We've lost Joseph, but we look a better team going forward, which is weird, but it often happens, doesn't it? When teams lose key players, they sometimes get somebody else from somewhere else or galvanise or whatever. But we'll probably have to adapt the way we play now. We don't have Joseph, but we've scored 5 goals in 2 games since he left. I hope hopefully it's not a flash in the pan and it continues. But I'm quite excited by that forward line.
Yeah, and you've got to hope, and we'll talk about it in the latter part, but you've got to hope we start to, because Kurt's right. We said pre-pod, we'll see how serious we're taking this season by the end of the window. And although we don't expect to sign 6, even a singular centre midfielder and a singular striker, which mean we've got that little bit more depth to have a go. Because 20 odd games is a lot of games to play. Of course, 60 odd points. It's enough to get you in the playoffs almost alone some seasons. So it will be interesting to see what happens the next week. Certainly for sure. Kurt, I do want to talk about it. I think we've all got different favourite goals. This was might pip it as one of my favourite goals. I know Bloxham's was audacious as they come. The man that just appeared on the screen, obviously Adello Fire winning the ball back. And this goal reminded me somewhat of Yates when he scored against Portsmouth in the COVID season, because the ref played advantage and we scored from a counter where you thought the ref was only just going to blow up. But the ability just to shake off the foul, carry on down the pitch, obviously touch the ball to Morgan. I think it's Morgan, if I'm not wrong, who plays literally a delicious whip pass into Hamilton. And similar to Huddersfield, he had the composure to finish it. 3 reasons why I like the goal. Adele's strength and his ability to carry on and have the presence of mind to give it to Morgan. Morgan's my favourite pass out of the 3 because obviously the whip straight to Hamilton in space is fantastic. And obviously CJ's really hit or miss, but the fact he had the ability to slide it into the goal at that moment in time, if we didn't get that goal, it could have been one of these 0-0s, which was hard to sort of break down Exeter, and they would have gained more confidence. But the move itself was sensational in my opinion. And yes, they weren't great defensively, but you've got to have that move in your locker, and we certainly did that, and it showed how good the 4-4-2 can be sometimes.
Yeah, it's scary on the break, isn't it? When you've got players at pace like CJ and Apter and Bloxham and Fletcher. I think, credit to the ref for the one single thing that he did very well throughout the entire game. Because I thought he was absolutely garbage. But he was garbage for us, which makes a change. Everyone was like, what was the song they were singing? I can't remember the Blackpool fans. Can you ref us every week? I think we were singing towards the end of the game. Look, CJ was a little bit different on Saturday. He's a bit more direct. His angles at running were direct. So when he picked the ball up, it was heading towards goal as opposed to heading away to it. And I thought that was really noticeable. And I think Husband supported him pretty well throughout the entire game. My frustration with CJ is he always seems to find a way to go missing. But his finish was great, very composed, perfect. Exactly what we want to see from him is getting himself in the game and getting on the score sheet and popping up with assists. So one of the things we had a problem at the start of the season is we don't have options, and we seem to have options now. Out wide anyway. We've removed the options from up front, but out wide we've kind of got options, and that's what you need when you have players might not be at it, Apter might not be at it, you bring someone else off the bench, so yeah, really, really, really good goal, that one. I think the Fire, I don't think Fire will ever make it higher up than maybe the Championship playing at right back, because I don't think he's got enough going forward, but at this level he just takes the mick. The kid is just unbelievable. That alley will never have a harder game. I know he scored, didn't he, as well in the second half?
Tidy finish.
But he was absolutely in a Fire's pocket. It was like watching, when you're at school, year 11s playing the year 7s at football. You're just taking the mick out of them because you just give me the ball, off I go, and that was part of the run, wasn't it? Great for the referee not to call it back, but Fire was taking him with him. Whilst running with the ball, he's like, you can hold on to me, but you're coming with me as well. So yeah, Fire was fantastic on Saturday, and yeah, hopefully they don't recall him. I don't know if they can. I don't know how it works, but keep him fit for the rest of the season.
Can't do it now. There's a deadline, isn't it? I think it's gone.
Deadline's gone. Yeah.
Good.
Kurt, sorry, Martin. I am going to stay with you because you both called it your favourite goals or whatever. I'll come to you for the third goal. Kurt, let's talk about Bloxham's second goal, or our second goal, Bloxham's first. When was the last time we had a player had the ability and mind to do what he did? I will caveat this. I don't think he can do that every week because the defender was nowhere near him in terms of pace and strength, and they didn't really have an organised back line. But either way, I'm not going to take anything away from Bloxham because it was edge of the seat stuff, and he's scoring goals which almost leaves you silent for a good 5 seconds after it goes in because it was just a first class finish, and he's got a lot about him. And I probably back your point up. The 2 goals that he had contributions in came as him being a winger and apt to sort of dip in the middle. So it is that 4-4-2 with those 2 is working really well. But over to you with especially from the stadium. How you felt.
Yeah, carbon copy, wasn't it? Yeah, that touch. Like I said, he's got that yard on most defenders at this level, and that touch past the almost last man. Isolating himself and Fletcher with the centre back, and as soon as he got the ball, I was just watching and waiting for him to strike, and hit it. That's what I was expecting. But yeah, great goal. I think we've got a bit of an issue with Fletcher in that the fans are still sort of, he was a bit of a negative signing for us in terms of numbers and in terms of reports from other teams. But I thought he had a great game and he's starting to really grow. We were under pressure at one point in the first half, and he came really, really deep and just picked the ball up and gave them something else to think about, laid it off really nicely, helped us to exit from a difficult area. Maybe there's some of the things that our fans aren't necessarily seeing. He is frustrating in a similar fashion to CJ, who, after he scored, then passed one out for a goal kick. That's what you get with some of these players at League One level. Fletcher then in the second half hit an air shot, but he was about a metre away from the ball. But I think Fletcher's kind of growing a little bit, and he's in the right positions. And maybe, we have a player at Bloxham that will look up a little bit and start to find him, because that's a great finish. Really composed finish. You could have easily have spooned that or anything, but I thought it was a really great finish. I think he's starting to come under the radar a little bit of our fans. And if we start to back him and get a bit of positivity about this team, we could go somewhere. I think that's part of it now is getting a bit of positivity back. We get a win or draw tomorrow night and then get a win on Saturday, and we can go, well, we got loads of home games left. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, I think Saturday, not just dismissing tomorrow, because I pray to God that we don't lose, of course, but if we, like you say, avoid defeat and get that elusive home win, we can start to build something, especially with double-digit home games left. And with, some big games in there, obviously the likes of Birmingham and Wrexham and stuff like that as well. So they're going to be big atmospheres, aren't they? So one thing I will say about Fletcher as well, obviously the Huddersfield, he got a bit of criticism. Should he have thrown himself at the ball with the one that hit the bar and dropped in? And obviously we had the opportunity where Hamilton played, I think, the correct pass, Martin, across goal, but he wasn't there to just tap it in from sort of a yard out. He just wasn't up to scratch with the cross. I don't know if the cross was too powerful or not, but nonetheless, as Kurt said, he's putting himself in those positions.
He's, look, we've had this discussion, haven't we? He's just one of those people that's probably polarized opinion at nearly every club he's been. There's clearly attributes there where you think, there's got to be attributes there, because he wouldn't have come from where he's come from, and he probably had as many moves. And it's just like, I think every manager must get hold of Ashley Fletcher and I'm going to be the one that sorts him out, and then no one ever does. But Bruce really seems to have got through to him. I think he dropped him, didn't he? And then he brought him back, and he's been in the team pretty much ever since. And he offers more than, sadly, he offers more than Jordan Rhodes would if he was playing it, and he offers more than Beasley if he was playing. I know that's a pretty low bar at the moment, but but he's really growing on me too, and I'm happy to be proved wrong if he carries on doing it, because he has got power, he has got pace, and he clearly can finish. If you all right, Kurt's right though. He could have missed that, couldn't he? You know, it wasn't as easy.
It wasn't an easy chance.
Hmm?
It wasn't an easy chance, in my opinion. Like Blackpool Twitter said it was, or X said it was a tap in, but it wasn't a tap in. The goalkeeper was still there, right?
Yeah. No, he's definitely growing on us, and you know what? If he gets 10, you know, I'll write the check, and if he gets 15, I'll write 2 checks, and if we get in the playoffs, great. but yeah, it's he just needs help around him, though. He definitely needs some help. He needs to, as we say, we'll talk about it, but we need to get rid of a couple and probably bring in at least one to help him, I think.
Yeah, Martin, we'll talk about that third goal. We've just kind of alluded to it already, but the loose was a pass down the side, and obviously I actually thought you saw Bloxham's pace more for the third goal, because he was again, as Kurt said, more down that right side, burning the sidelines almost, and cutting into the left, and like you say, just looking up. I personally think he could have scored, but probably he could have, but it takes a good player to sort of look up and put the easier option in front of you. And I'll be fair to Fletcher as well. It was a very casual, calm finish from him, considering he hasn't scored since Reading. That's now 4 goals and 3 assists, 7 goal contributions, same as Evans and others who have had incredible seasons as well. So maybe the start of a couple of goals in the next few games, but a good finish and an even better assist.
Fantastic. I mean, it has to be said, whenever you analyse a goal as a manager, you can always look at it and say it's preventable. I mean, the defending from them was utterly atrocious. But you know what? This is League One, and you are going to get atrocious defending. As Ben was saying, Peterborough are atrocious against them on Saturday. So you can only take advantage of what's there. But Bloxham just, he just has this ability to sort of accelerate. I mean, we said that there's not many 6'5" wingers around. It's a very modern thing, that really, isn't it? A 6'5" winger is quite incredible, but he's got all the attributes, and I think we've done incredibly well to get him. I don't know who else was interested, but we've done incredibly well to get him, and he's just somebody that is very exciting and very direct, but also has a brain. Which how many times we talk about on this pod about it, football intelligence. He's clearly got it, so we need to harness it and use it as best we can, because he's very exciting to watch.
More importantly, Martin, he can do a backflip when he scores as well. So if anything, that's probably more important than anything that we said so far. I think Luar must be the last one.
Yeah, that was Morgan's reaction to that backflip's great as well. Yeah.
Morgan's copy of the backflip as well. So
I will say, stop doing backflips, Bloxham. You're our most exciting player with that. Just put your hands up like Shearer and just enjoy the moment. I can't be having that. When you're 6'5" as well, it's even scarier to look at. Martin, I'll stick with you in the second half then. It was an interesting second half, because it wasn't without its moments, of course, but I'm not going to overanalyze it too much. Obviously, we set up in a way which allowed them to keep the ball, as the stats show there, 72%. They had 7 shots. We still had 6, so we countered pretty well. Both had 2 shots on target. But yeah, it was not exciting. However, we coped with it fairly well. Do you feel like that's how we wanted to set up, because it was a 3-goal deficit, or do you think we slipped back into allowing them to come into it a little bit? Because again, against Huddersfield, we had 2 lapses of concentration. They've got 2 goals. If they get that penalty on Saturday, it's a few minutes left, it's 3-2. It becomes a bit more nervous, I suppose. So what's your thoughts on the second half and how we cope with the game?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because when you've not won for a long time and you find yourself in unfamiliar territory, 3-0. I mean, 3-0 should be, no team should ever lose a 3-goal lead. But if you concede early in the first half, in the second half, and it gets their tails up, and then you think, God, if we were to concede the next one, then it's the Alamo and all hell can break loose. So I don't think Steve Bruce is the kind of manager who's crazy about going for 4 and 5 if he's 3-0 up, because he probably thinks, well, we don't need to. In fact, he's alluded to that, hasn't he, in his comments in some of the games since he's been here, that we were against Bolton. I think he was like, well, we were looking for a winner. I mean, there's nothing wrong with looking for a winner, but I think if you're 3 up, there's an argument. just play the same way and try and pick them off and get more. But I think when you've not won for a long time, it's a bit safety first. Not necessarily boring, but just trying to control it. And if anything comes your way, it comes your way. But inevitably, when you do that, though, the other team will have a bit of a spell, and that's what happened. And we, because we're very nervous about the way we've been not winning really this season as consistently as we would, a goal changes the psyche a bit, and you start to get a little bit nervous about it. But I thought we were in control really till they scored. And Kurt probably, he knows better than I do. He was there, but I didn't feel too worried until they scored, and then it just rattles the nerves a bit, doesn't it? With sort of a few, 10 minutes to go or whatever, you start thinking, oh dear.
Can I add a little bit on top of that as well?
Yeah.
The drop off of players that we bring on is
Yeah.
substantial.
You're right.
On Rhodes, Beasley, Onuma, and it's I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's really you're bringing on a substantial lesser player. I mean, Silvera didn't have a really good 20 minutes. He was pretty poor, but the ball didn't stick, which is why they had 70% possession. And it felt like to me that a Fire, Husband, Baggett, Tyra, and Casey were like, we're going to hold you out for as long as possible until you get the goal. They're always going to score. It was whether they scored in the 55th minute or the 80-odd minute. And that's how it felt. It was like, you're going to have to work bloody hard to get one past us. So we're going to head everything, block everything, get rid of everything. And when they got rid of everything, it never stuck up top because it was a crap touch or nobody won a header or they were too slow. I mean, Beasley got put through one-on-one and the centre-back overtook him and got the ball again. So, that really highlights our problems. If you're bringing on someone with a bit of pace, and I know Don Ballard didn't quite work out, but he'd have been in one-on-one with the keeper in that scenario. So, look, we've got some work to do because, in games where we're 1-0 up with 5-10 minutes to go, we're 1-1 and then we've dropped 2 points because we don't have players that are coming on and making an impact. And that's really important. You're not always going to get to 3-0 away from home. We saw it with the Lincoln game. Lack of quality, battered them, probably should have been 2 or 3-0 up before we even got to them having a corner in the 98th minute and equalising. We played Birmingham, played Wrexham, a tiny bit more quality. Wrexham should never have beaten us. Birmingham, fortunate to have got a draw, in my opinion. A bit more quality, we'd have won. That might be the same for a lot of other teams, but particularly for us, we're bringing on players that are handicapping us and not adding more to the starting 11 that have done such a great job to get us in that position.
Yeah, no, I agree, Kurt. You're absolutely right. I think you're only as good as they say you're as good as your strikers, but you're probably as good as the strikers you've got on the bench. And like I say, Wrexham can bring on Fletcher. I mean, I know he's getting on a bit, but he can stick it in the back of the net, and he's won them probably 9 points over the Christmas period. And we don't. You're right. I feel like our best 11 is absolutely on the pitch, and the rest of them are kind of they are a bit. I don't like saying it, but they are a bit of dead wood that we need to clear out and get some inspiration off the bench, don't we? Definitely. Yeah, you're right.
Just on that, weird that we haven't really seen Gabriel Coulson in recent weeks. I think the issue is if you're sticking with Onuma with a Fire and Husband, that they don't suit the 4-4-2 anywhere else on the pitch, do they? So because we're not going to change formations, we're not really seeing them. But it is a squad game, and we're kind of going to be rinsing a Fire and Husband for most games. And I don't know what it is. Coulson hasn't even come on as a winger, has he, in terms of a substitute, Kurt? And slightly worrying that it's fallen out of favour a little bit. But at the same time, if he's not going to play in the 4-4-2, what really happens to those two?
Yeah, but you've got your captain on the pitch. You've got Lee Evans, who's not available. You've got, actually, when you look at it, quite a young team out there. You've got Baggett and Casey are quite relatively young, sub 25. A Fire, Tyra, 23. Husband's the oldest, isn't he? By quite a way. I know you've got Rhodes and that up top, but in terms of in the defence, and who's better at defending? Husband or Coulson, or Fire or Gabriel. And I think most Blackpool fans would go for a Fire and Husband. You're 3-0 up. You're not if you're chasing a goal, take Hubby off and bring Coulson on, because I think he's a better attacking player. And Silvera's always going to come on for one of the wingers. Apps was flagging massively after 65, 70 minutes. Isn't
that nice for us to be able to bring off Apta?
Yeah.
I mean, he might not have come off at if we were losing, he probably would have come off anyway, right? But the fact that we're 3-0 up and we can bring off both Bloxham and Apta is what signing players is brought to this club and allowed Bruce to do, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we said before the end of the transfer window that we needed wingers. I couldn't believe that we didn't sign any more attacking outlets. It's kind of really hamstrung us, isn't it? That CJ's out injured and suddenly Apta's the only real piece of creativity anywhere. Embleton didn't do it. Yeah. So, look, we've got an opportunity now to add 2 or 3 players to give Bruce a shot. I think he's deserved to have a shot. He's the first Blackpool manager I've trusted in a long time. Speaks sense. Listen to him after the game, and it's as if I've watched it and I'm saying it how it is. If it's rubbish, it's rubbish. If it was good and it can be improved, it's good and it can be improved. And he says it how it is for me, and that's all I want from a manager. I don't want him to sugarcoat it and and ah his way for an interview. So I think he's deserved his, more than deserved in his career, but it's particularly with his time with us. Difficult start with everything that happened, but we saw against Birmingham and Wrexham a little bit. We're not asking to go spend £3-4 million, but a little bit more quality. We'd beat both of them.
I will say, I was even when we've gone through this little bit of a bad spell, and I know football's very impactful in terms of being very, having that recency bias, but the more he's our manager, the more I trust him. And I said the other day in the group chat, I wish he was 5 years younger, because he's already, look what he's trimmed already. He knows Embleton is poor. He knows, Norburn, he's not going to get minutes. So you're out, you're on loan. He might not ever play for us again. It's very likely. And I said, is it the last time he's going to play for us? I think so. So do you know what I mean? He's straight out. He's not going to come back. And he's trimming the players that he knows is not going to be involved in the future. So he's now piecing the puzzle together. And I really hope if we don't go up this year that he's going to stick with being a manager, and he is backed at least to how he wants to be backed. With this £2 million, even if we get sort of 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 million of it, we've got enough there to buy probably, 3 or 4 really good players, as well as getting a couple on loan and having a real good, deep squad that is going to play to his ability as a manager and get the message that he's trying to send. So I think you're right, Kurt. I think he deserves to have a shot, and a centre midfielder and a striker is an absolute minimum. And that's probably what I was going to come to next, just before we end the podcast. Obviously, two questions to you both then, Kurt. Any changes for Lincoln if Evans is back? Would you bring him in? I suppose the defence is going to stay the same, and probably the strikers, but would you unchange that? Would you keep it unchanged, or would you make any changes?
I think you have to, like they blew Exeter away in the first half. I think you have to, even if you have have Evans back. I think Evans probably. I doubt Evans, having been out on Saturday, will suddenly be available for Tuesday. Yeah, even if I don't know what the injury is, but I doubt that. Keep it exactly the same. Unless there's some niggles, maybe you could try Silvera on the right and give Apta a break and get Apta to come on the last 25 minutes. Apta played well on Saturday. He actually was part of one of the goals and winning the ball. Yeah. But I'd keep it pretty much exactly the same.
And same to you, Mark?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if Evans was fit, he's one of the first names on the team sheet, but he's not really recaptured the form of the first few months either. But if he's fit, you probably play him. But it looks like everything else just needs to stay the same.
Just a question on Evans. I know his output is key passes, and he's had 7 goals and assists this campaign as well. He sits top. I think for assist with us, I think he's got 7 assists, something like that. Do you think he on form? Obviously, he's brilliant, but when he's off form, Kurt, would you rather not play him and keep Morgan as the main man, because Morgan's clearly potentially got he's got a bit more pace about him, and he's quite strong in that midfield. It's a question that a lot of fans are probably 70-30 on keeping him in, but a lot of fans, or a couple of fans, said to me he's very sideways, backwards, slow, and they both get in each other's way. So I don't know, replacing Carey with someone of a much better centre midfield ilk would make us even better, or putting a third in and playing a 4-3-3. I don't know. What's your opinions, Kurt?
I've said this for a while, and we need another midfielder with an engine. And no disrespect to Lee Evans, but by engine I mean able to get around the park pretty quickly. Morgan could be in the forward third, and then he's back defending in the back third. Evans, for me, fantastic player. Technical ability is brilliant. Long range passing, set pieces is fantastic. I think Evans would be better in a 3. If you had a really strong midfield 2 and you were playing 1 up front. I'd probably look. The lad that played for Stockport and his name, the little blonde lad, is it Lewis Bate? He's exactly what I mean. Young, energetic, good passing.
Loan from Leeds, I think.
Brilliant. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, he's this sort of player that I mean. Young, good engine. Will play 90 minutes. He'll play 90 minutes. He'll play 90 minutes, but he'll be at the same sort of tempo the entire game. Evans does drop off to 70 minutes, and the problem, but he seems to be just on the pitch after 90. So it's very rare that he gets taken off. So yeah, for me, leave Evans out, even if he somehow makes it on the bench. It's unnecessary to bring him back in. And that's the one thing that Sonny Carey has over him is the 90 minutes engine, where he doesn't have as much technical ability than Evans.
I'm just going to ring up Isaiah Osborne, see what he's up to.
Yeah.
Martin, as an optimistic Blackpool fan, what do you see happening in this last week of the window? And more importantly, if you could sign 2 players, would it be a centre midfielder and a striker, or what would you do as a perfect bit of business before the end of the window?
I'd like to sign 3. I'd like to sign 2 midfielders and a striker, but definitely one of both. One of either is not enough. Definitely need 2. I hope that he backs Bruce. If he can't back Steve Bruce, he can't back anybody. And as Kurt rightly said, we'll see. We'll get an insight into what Sadler's intentions are. And I noticed that we mentioned before there's a Q&A just been announced which has no involvement from the people who actually run the club. And I don't know whether that's telling me, it just reinforces what I already think. I know a lot of us think that, we don't want to face awkward questions about the future, because so just put the football people in front and dodge it. But we'll see, won't we? Actions speak louder than words, and we'll see if he backs him. But if he can't back Steve Bruce, he can't back anybody. But my only thing, I think Steve Bruce knows what he's got to play with. I don't think he's going to go into the office on the 4th of February and say, you promised me this. I think he knows what he's got to play with, and it's whether you get it over the line. Niall Ennis fits the profile of us, somebody who's still got something to prove. But my worry about that is that, as someone's rightly pointed out, Schumacher loved him at Plymouth, and if he goes to Bolton, he may well see as somebody he could take with him. Maybe that's the delay. I hope I'm not reading too much into it, but yeah, a good up and down the pitch central midfielder and a striker, definitely. Yeah, holding. Tony's right. We said that like a bastard in midfield. I say bastard in midfield, somebody who can get up and down the pitch and a striker. And I don't think we can ask for too much more from this window, really. And maybe a couple of the people who aren't playing to go. Maybe Jordan Rhodes will go to Oldham potentially, or Beasley will be down the road, because we won't need them if we sign another striker, I don't think.
Kurt, just finally, Bruce said we've shown an interest of 3 or 4, so we'll see what happens. And just to add to Martin's point, I do genuinely think he knows. Maybe he's got, say, you can put a bid in for X amount on these 4 or 5 players. I don't see us signing those 4 or 5, but I do see us doing a bit of business. From what we understand, Ennis is almost all but done. Maybe Schumacher's come in and said, I want to keep him, like Martin said, but a championship striker who's not scored many goals, who knows? But showing an interest of 4 or 5 and actually putting in bids is obviously one thing. But what would your perfect bit of business be before the end of the window?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that we need strikers. Personally, I'd like, we've got space for another loan, whether that be a young, technically good Dewsbury Hall type find centre midfield, the exact sort of engine from an Arsenal or someone in the Premier League. I mean, everybody's looking for that sort of loan, but we've managed to pick that sort of player up, or a striker. Maybe 2 strikers if we can get Beasley and Rhodes off the books. 2 strikers would be ideal. I don't think it'll happen. I think we'll probably end up with 1, and that will say all we need to know about what's currently happening at the football club. I don't want to be too negative about it, but that's how I feel at the minute. I feel like the positivity is kind of being drained out of us, and we're all looking at Steve Bruce for the positivity, which is why they're throwing him in front of a crowd of Blackpool fans, because he'll speak really well. Everybody respects him. Everybody listens to him. He's trying to put a team out that will entertain us and get results. And it's the kind of shining light at the football club at the minute. Might be wrong, might be proven completely wrong. But when we've tried to go out and get that sort of marquee signing, we've proverbially shit the bed every single time. You know, we talk about the Brannigans, the Barlazers over the years, all the Low. Was it Low this time last year? Was that someone that we're looking at? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the Sheffield
You know,
Wednesday midfielder
and,
who would have been
you know,
perfect last year or whatever it was.
I don't know what happened with Berry, but if we've offered 500k for Berry and they've turned around, we want 750k. Okay, we're not going to go that far. We're not that serious about it. Go prove me wrong. That's all I'll say is go prove me wrong and do something about it. Because
the thing with Berry, I don't know if it was a Bloxham or Berry situation. Yes, obviously both would have been amazing, but I think Bruce said we actively didn't go for that second bid after we got Bloxham. So maybe we could have got Berry. Maybe he said he doesn't want to come to Blackpool. You know, there is elements of that. He's a talent and a half, but you know, if rumour has it, he had a bit of an attitude and he said no thanks to Blackpool. So it might just have been.
And he's got a terrible haircut as well, so that's something else to put on him.
But also, Wickham are on the verge of potentially getting promotion, and we're nowhere near it right now. So again, the bid might not have been encouraged to go that far. He wanted to go for a team that, unfortunately, Wickham being arrogant about it, Wickham shouldn't have a shot at the Championship instead of us. But they do. The fact is they do, and well played to them. But right. I got a feeling
6 million for their striker, if reports to be had.
Incredible money. The world has gone mental if someone's bidding that.
If they don't sell him for half the price that Stansford went, then they're idiotic. I know they want him for this season, but he could pull his hamstring plus 6 million quid. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting. Right, lads, I'm going to call that pod. We've got how long? A week until the transfer window?
Yeah.
7 days. Ends on the 3rd, doesn't it, this time around? So it'll be interesting to see what business we do. But we'll be back, I think, on Wednesday. It won't be a live podcast, but we'll have a preview of Charlton and we'll look back at Lincoln. And that pod will be out very soon, as will this one. But thanks again, everyone listening. Thanks, Martin, for joining us.
You're welcome. Safe travels to anybody going to Lincoln tomorrow night, and let's get the 3 points. And I think it's a free hit. The next 20 games. Let's go for it. Let's go for it and see where it takes us.
A free hit for 20 games. That's a statement I didn't think you'd say, but Kurt, it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad you've come back for at least one podcast so far this year.
I'm only coming back for the win, so I'll see you in March.
Yeah. I'll see you Wednesday, mate. A bit of positivity. But from all of us at the It's Not Orange podcast, we'll be back literally in a couple of days, and we'll see you soon.